I am so ready for season 4 of Stranger Things. I think that all previous 3 seasons are good and they all attempted something different, and I like all of those seasons in very different ways. But let's start with the first season. The first season of Stranger Things is the most innocent one, is the most childlike one, because all of the actors and the characters are still little kids at that time. And looking back at it now, it's so adorable seeing how they are all just little kids and doing what little kids do and stuff like that. And this season pulled a lot from E.T. And I don't think that it feels like a rip-off, but instead it feels like a very respectful tribute to the stuff that we really liked back in the 80s. Although I wasn't born in the 80s, so it's kind of contradictory that I'm saying that. But you get the point. It's like a celebration of the 80s, and the production design is on point. It really feels really transportive. It really feels like you're going all the way back to the 80s by just watching this show, by looking at the way people dress and the hair, all that kind of stuff. And the music is really good too, both the licensed music and the original soundtrack too. The original soundtrack features really good synth pop, like synthesizers, and in a really dark way. As much as I like the music, the production values, all of that stuff, it's the characters that I love the most about Stranger Things throughout all 3 seasons. It's the characters that are so iconic and really likable. The first season focuses a lot on the kids. The 4 kids, one of them who disappeared. It's not a spoiler, by the way, it happens very early on. And this kid disappears, and all 3 of the other kids are trying to find this kid. And I like the friendship between all the kids in this show. I like the teamwork between all these kids, and I like how simple this show is. It focuses on just the kids compared to the other seasons, which had a lot of different characters, different storylines. I liked how innocent it is, how childlike it is, and I think it's a really good tribute to all the stuff back in the 80s. It's not something that's completely original, but it doesn't have to be because it's a tribute, and I think it works that way. Now moving on to season 2. Season 2 isn't as fun as the first season. And the first season is like the first few releases of the Harry Potter movies. It's like the Chamber of Secrets, the Philosopher's Stone. Those Harry Potter movies are more innocent, they are more childlike. And the subsequent releases where they have to confront Voldemort is when the whole series of Harry Potter starts to get really dark and serious. It's the same thing with the first season of Stranger Things. Everyone is just having fun. The kids are just hanging out. Of course, there's a really dark story that's happening in the background, but mostly it's a pretty fun show. And I think that it's a really enjoyable show, but it's not necessarily an emotional show. But the second season really amped up the emotions. Now that they have introduced the characters, now they can really do a lot with these characters and really develop their characteristics. And I think that a lot of these characters get really well developed at the point of season 2. In season 1, they were all just either cliches, but cliches that work as a tribute to the 80s, or sometimes they just work as just, I don't know, background foil. Sometimes these characters don't really feel like they have much character development to them, even though they are very likable. But with this season, each character I think gets really developed throughout this season, and you really see some significant changes in the way the characters act, and you really see a lot of depth in these characters. I think season 2 is the most emotional season. It's also the slowest one, so you have to get through some of the slower parts, but I don't really mind that because I think the slower parts are necessary for setting up the emotional beats that would happen in the later episodes. One thing I really like about Stranger Things is how the world is. I like the idea of this upside down world where everything looks the same. All the buildings are the same, they are at the same locations as they were in the real world. However, it's a world that's full of desolation, a world where everything is really cold and dark and full of despair. And I like that idea, and I like how in season 1 everything happens in that world called the Upside Down. Everything happens in the Upside Down. But in season 2, everything from the Upside Down is now on Earth. So it's like, actually it's like Doom. It's like the first Doom game was in Hell, and then the second Doom game, it came over to Earth. In season 3, Stranger Things becomes incredibly terrifying. I have no idea why. The season 2 of Stranger Things pulled a lot from The Exorcist, which is what a lot of people say to be the scariest movie of all time. Yet as much as it pulls from The Exorcist, it's really not as scary as season 3. Season 3 had all the blood, all the gore. And it's not just the blood and gore, it's the suspense as well. The really intense level of suspense throughout this show that really surprised me. And a show that's on season 3 could still manage to surprise me. That's a really impressive thing. Because I really wasn't expecting this from Stranger Things, and I don't think a lot of people actually talk about how genuinely terrifying it is. I like it. I like all the horror influences that I feel in this season of Stranger Things. Also, I like how the kids talk. I know that's something that started with season 1. Season 1 had the kids hang out and talk like kids would when the adults aren't supervising them. They curse, they talk about certain stuff that adults would not want them to talk about. But that's just the way kids act. And what I like about season 3 also is the character development. It only gets better at this point. In season 1, the character development is a little bit lacking, but it doesn't matter because that's the introductory season. With season 2, the character development gets better. And I think with season 3, you really get to see the character arc. You get to see the whole character development starting from season 1 and how each character changes throughout season 3. Some of these characters, when you look back at how they were back in season 1, you realize just how much they have changed. And I really do genuinely care about these characters at this point. Now, one of the best things about season 3 is how each character had their own plotline. They all had their own stuff to do. No character feels vacant. No character feels extra or unnecessary. A lot of the characters introduced in season 2 carried over to season 3, and a lot of these characters have really integral roles in the whole plot. And I like how all these characters with their different plot lines, they all eventually come together at the final episode to defeat this evil monster. I think this is a really good structure. But it's also a double-edged sword. Although I really like this, I also don't like how there's a lack of interactions between certain characters. Like for example, the 4 kids that I very much enjoyed watching them hang out and bicker in the first season. Now one of the 4 kids, one of them is going on his own adventure. So stuff like that, or how the siblings don't really interact in this season. Also, I think the performances are really good, especially with Winona Ryder and David Harbour. Another gripe I have is that one of the characters is revealed to be a lesbian. And I don't have a problem with lesbian characters or gay characters or bisexual characters. My problem is how that aspect fits into this show. I don't think that it feels natural at all. I think it feels really forced, and I don't think that modern shows should feel obligated to have representation of the LGBT community in their stories, because I feel like some shows, they just have something like this just so they could feel like they're representing this. It's not a natural progression for the character or for the writing or whatever. It's just for the sake of representation, and I feel it's that way in Stranger Things. The main problem here, I think, is just the lack of interactions, and I hope to see more interactions between different characters in season 4. But still, I'm really compelled by each season of Stranger Things. Season 1 is a fun, innocent season. Season 2 is the emotional, heartwarming season. And season 3 is a downright terrifying season. And I'm really hoping to see what season 4 would attempt, both tonally and narratively. I want to see where the story is going to go. I want to see how the characters are going to change. And I want to see how it's going to be a tribute to the 80s once again.